Hello everyone and welcome back to Make Believe, where we're playing World and Economica. Now last time they tried out Hagen's new program and it was working great. Not perfect, but it was getting the job done with Yoshiharu's help. To the point where he even considered taking that into the real market so that they can actually make some real money. But Hagana didn't feel confident enough on that. So there's some work there. And also, Yoshiharu got a reward from Lisa. And he ended up picking the thing that has been bugging his mind all this time, thanks to the guy from the Big Bow Cafe. I forgot his name. Seralt. Thanks to Seralt, the lap pillow. But I think that's basically all really happened last episode. So let's continue. It's this one. It's like I'm trying to figure out which one's the latest one. By the next day, Hagana had contacted Seralt, and the program that used real trading data to calculate prices was complete. Okay, so they are working on the program for the real thing. I had no idea whether it was Seralt or Hagana who was amazing, but in any case, it was all amazing. Maybe a bit of both. That program could even work in the real world. Hagana's program essentially copied what I was doing, but it wasn't like me because it wouldn't get sick and it wouldn't get dull when it rained. It would scan the entire market tirelessly every day. Always came back with some kind of seed for profit. I'd give that water and care. When it sprouted, I'd harvest. On the fake market, in a week we went from 25 million to 32 million moles. In the real world, 70,000 moles became 79,000. Okay, so they're both. So they are already doing for the real world and the virtual market. The reason why the gains in the real world weren't that much was because the situation was more complicated, and so the program's effectiveness was lower. Also, I couldn't bring myself to be that confident, so he wasn't really wagering way too much money on it, on the stocks. However, Hagen's program did give me clues, and with those clues, I could pry open the piggy bank. Didn't I say it would work? After the first trade, I remember saying that to Hagana. Hagana was still acting like a kitten that had been teased and was still wary. When I ran away from home and started trading, I had profited so insanely that I wondered repeatedly if it had all just been luck. But I had accumulated so much profit that I started wondering if the world was really that easy. Of course, for the moment, we were moving sluggishly, or marching in place, but I thought it was just a temporary thing. Hagana was basically listening to how I made decisions and then turned them into formulas. It wasn't making me obsolete so much as just handling the calculations I couldn't do. Like how when people pulled limestone from the lunar surface for buildings, they used machines to make their work faster. Machines could do everything a worker could faster and to a larger extent, but they couldn't construct a building like a worker can. In the end, it was a question of give and take, and which two could be used the best. Hagana said that she could create a program, but couldn't put it to use. I was the reverse. However, I also knew that Hagana's understated but deep suspicions came from a different source. Things couldn't be going so well. If it were going well, that'd be just luck. If that weren't the case, then the world wouldn't be this unhappy. That's why, after the first day of trading ended, in order to help Hagana believe in her great success, I ran to the shopping center and withdrew some money. I had confidently said that I'd give Hagana 20% of all the profits. So I withdrew 240 moles based on the 1200 moles of the profits from that day. Then I shoved two 100 mool bills and two 20 mool bills at Haganah, who had been glancing at the trading records. I wanted to show her that these weren't profits from the fake market. I wanted to teach her that her abilities in math weren't something for solving just problems on paper, but could bring in money if used properly. And one day, she made 240 moles. Having 4 crumpled bills shoved at her, Haganah was so surprised she couldn't speak. Her face was full of surprise, like she just saw a picture of food suddenly becoming real food. Interesting analogy with food, but I can see what you mean. When she finally reached out with her hands slowly, she didn't aim to take them, but touched them like she was checking that they were real. This is real? And finally, she turned to me and asked, her brows furrowed, looking at me as if I were a hard-to-read piece of text. I didn't get angry or exasperated at her suspicion. I straightened up and nodded proudly. That's right, we made 1,200 moles today. Not in the fake world, the real one. Haganah stared at me, then looked again at the bills. The crumpled things made a weak crinkling noise as she touched them. But even then, they definitely existed, and she used all 4. They could buy plenty of things. Math could solve a lot of problems on a desk, but cash could solve a lot of problems in life. Yeah, that kind of reminds me of the whole money doesn't bring happiness, but it's close, or it's very helpful still. You can buy something. Huh? The money you made teaching math, all of it you gave to Lisa, right? Don't you have anything you want? When I asked, she apparently couldn't think of anything. With an extremely young and innocent look, she tilted her head and thought. When I went to ask Chris what sort of things Haganah liked, there hadn't been a good answer. Maybe she just didn't have an interest in that kind of thing. There's nothing I want. Then she spoke. Well, that was something I could see coming, so I wasn't surprised. However, I was surprised at what followed. But I want to use it for something. Oh, that's great. Money is for using, after all. No point in saving it all up and never using it. Saving is good, but you also need to know when to save and when to use. Of course, Haganah tilted her head again when I said that, but her black eyes looked at me steadily. Then, taking 2 of the 4 bills, she spoke. With this, I'll pay off the interest. Ah, huh? The interest you paid. It should have been 200 moles. That. Haganah pushed it at me without hesitation. I'm paying that with this. She held the bills out at me, looked at me levelly. It was true that I had paid 200 moles worth of interest to Toyama for Lisa. She hasn't paid it back yet, and I didn't intend on being wish-washy about it. After all, he is helping her pay 50,000. I think 200 is water under the bridge. But was there a reason for Haganah to pay it? In the end, Haganah was just like me. Just living together with Lisa and having no real connection with her. Plus, Lisa probably didn't want Haganah to pay it either. Okay, saying that she doesn't have real connections, I'm not so sure about that. They don't have any blood connection or anything, but I feel like they're very connected. Thinking about it logically, that was what I concluded. But with Haganah pushing bills at me with childlike innocence, I couldn't say it. For Haganah, the way to feel that she was solving problems in real life on her own came down to this. It was to be useful to someone, and she probably couldn't think of anyone other than Lisa. If that was the case, since my internal accounting books balanced out, I didn't care. What came after would be a problem between Hagana and Lisa. I accepted the two crumpled bills from Hagana. Then with this, Lisa's got no debt to me. Yeah. After putting the 2 bills in my pocket, I added a little extra. Lisa will be happy. Really? Hagana asked back like a child. Probably. Lisa's quite honest, so in some situations she might not be able to appreciate the gesture from her heart. But considering Lisa's personality, she wouldn't do something that would hurt Hagana's feelings. She'd sigh, be pleased, and feel thankful to Hagana. Afterwards, she'd find some way to scrape together the money, and when it was the right time, give it to Hagana. I could see that happening. However, there was something I didn't predict. The moment I spoke, Hagana looked down and had on a slightly embarrassed smile. It was a truly happy and worry-free smile. She probably seemed embarrassed because she wasn't that good at smiling. But once again, this is probably an expression we don't see every day from Hagana. Just like how you can't control your body well if you don't exercise, smiling uses muscles in your face. So it's the same thing. Still, that's why I thought that smile was a wonderful thing. I've seen Hagana smile and her relieved face before, but those were all things that just went as far as her softening her sharp eyes. Right now, in front of me, Hagana was actually moving her face to smile. And that was undeniably cute. If I weren't paying attention, I might have reached out and touched it. Wow. Like, Yoshar's not noticing, but he's very much encapsulated by her. Like, enchanted by her, rather. Hagana smiled, bent her head down, took a deep breath, and breathed out. Breathing in and out. Her slim body seemed even smaller. It seemed like she was exhausted after finishing some strenuous exercise. With a bit of the smile still on her lips, she looked wearily at the table. Wearily? You're going to give me the rest? Of course, it's yours. She gave a small nod, took the bills, and folded them neatly and carefully. But from here on out, we're gonna make a lot more. So much you won't have time to fold them. With Hagana's program and my trading skills, that wasn't an exaggeration. However, the smile from Hagana's mouth disappeared, and her face returned to its usual expressionless. She looked at me with eyes as cold as deep space. Then she gave me a small sigh. I don't think it would go that well. Yeah, see, we need a middle ground here. We don't need to become overconfident like Yoshihara is sounding like. But we need some confidence, unlike Hagana here. Oh, quiet. That's got nothing to do with it. Did I say? Not about saying how it would go well, but keep going until it works. Having her say that before I could, I was so surprised I was stunned. Then, another small smile appeared in Hagana's eyes. Oh, we're actually getting to see this face again. My heart is beating really fast. For something like this to happen, I can't believe it. Hagana put her thin hands on top of the black clothing on her chest. Since her skin was white, those small hands seemed like they were glowing softly on a sea of black. Hagana looked down a moment, up, as if to bear through the pain in her chest, and then she looked up. She had sharp eyes, but they were just a little soft too. Even now, they seemed like they might suddenly smile, and I felt something close to fear. Still, obviously, there was no way Hagana would be doing things like a cute girl would. But instead, with a friendly yet expressionless face, she spoke. Thank you. As if nothing special had happened, she quickly turned her eyes back to her terminal. What? Until she asked that, I had just been staring at her. Oh, since we've got the ceiling view again. Since we're winning, even on the real market, the virtual market required me to only follow whatever the program said to make a profit. The top was still claimed by Mr. Trochet. He had increased his funds to 56 million moles. In second place was apparently someone who classed onto some skyrocketing stocks this past few days, shooting him into the top 10 with 41 million moles. Third through fifth were very close to each other in the low 30 million mole range. Aren't you in the low 30 million? Like 32 million? One of them had already locked in positions, so only one rival remained who was still trading. In other words, as long as they didn't do something stupid, I'd at least be able to get 20,000 moles of prize money. There was also the possibility of getting scouted by a Schrödinger Street firm. The time I spent pondering that had gradually increased. This wasn't simply a pipe dream. Since this was a reality that was actually in reach, I couldn't help but imagine what would happen. If the doors to Schrödinger Street would open, that would be a big step for me to reach my dreams. That street watched over by a sleeping cat was a direct golden path to enormous wealth. It was a Sunday morning like many that I had spent at Lisa's church. While lying in bed, I stretched my hands towards the ceiling and grasped at something invisible. This was my chance. This was fortune knocking on the door. Huh? Having done my usual exercise and body training, I walked into the living room to find both Lisa and Haganah missing. It was deserted, and not a sound could be heard. Well, since this was later than usual, perhaps Lisa and Haganah had gone out somewhere. However, it still felt odd to me. Lisa would be the type of person who'd at least leave some breakfast prepared before leaving. Instead, Lisa's terminal sat on the table. On the display read a memo. We're in the yard on the 3rd floor. She left a memo on her terminal, huh? 3rd floor? I murmured, but it did say that on the memo, so I headed to the 3rd floor. Are we going to the little yard there? Are we gonna have a special shot of that? Or just the background? There was a broom jammed in the auto-locking door, preventing it from closing. I guess they really were outside. When I opened the door, pure white sheets drying in the sun filled my vision. In the corner of the yard was Lisa leaning on a big cushion reading. On her lap was a sleeping Haganah. Oh, I was just looking at this on Steam, this image on Steam. I had no idea when that was gonna be. Guess we found it. Look at this. They're just having enjoying their day. Not too loud. Lisa whispered to me with a finger over her lips after noticing me. I slowly closed the door and wedged the broom in to prevent it from closing completely. I was still baffled by what was going on here. There was a cloth sheet laid out on the ground, and the cushions and blankets were used to prop up her back. In arm's reach were a canteen and a cup with a steam rising out of it, as well as some light snacks. Where's the canteen? I guess like over this way? So it's just like what they'd call a picnic back on Earth. I guess you don't have picnics here? Sometimes it's nice to have one of these. Lisa held a plate of light snacks out to me. I walked over and picked up a sandwich while standing and munched on it. Quite peaceful, isn't it? Lisa looked up at me from behind her glasses. Oh, she was wearing glasses? Why aren't they here? Beautiful weather and relaxing low gravity. These were the only things needed to turn people born on the moon into idiots. I feel like I'm about to die. I guess you are a boy after all. I guess I'm just a boy. I shrugged and then took some coffee Lisa poured for me. The program Hagana made. Yeah? It's being used on the real market as well, right? Hagana really took a liking to Lisa. Even now, on Lisa's lap, she was sleeping calmly and breathing through her half-open mouth. You really needed to see this to be able to tell that she took a liking to Lisa? She's very attached to Lisa. And you don't realize, but you're the second closest person to her. Like, she needed your company when she went to the Big Bow Cafe, and was very worried when you were leaving the room. Yep, and it's doing quite awesome, I might say. I heard from Hagana. It's almost unbelievable. It wasn't a lie for Hagana's sake, right? Do I look that kind-hearted? In either case, I think your kindness would show itself elsewhere. That woman really chose her words well. I crammed the second sandwich into my mouth and said, well, anyway, I guess our current problem is pretty much solved. Not only was there the investment contest, but if we could be successful with investing in the real markets, we should be able to blow this money problem out of the water. Before long, we'd be able to make 50,000 moves with no sweat. So, with that done, yeah? What are you going to do afterwards? I had been looking at the scenery and I looked back at Lisa. On her lap lay the sleeping Hagana, and in her hand was an old book. This was definitely exactly how Lisa would want to spend her days. Lisa wasn't the type to walk into Newton City and into the world of wealth and opulence. I had originally planned to simply rent out a place to live temporarily over here. Even if I didn't get scouted, I was planning on heading to Schrodinger Street with the experience I had from the investment contest to solicit myself. If the program continued the way it was, my funds would increase further, and there'd be no problem finding a place to live over there. However, it was very comfortable staying here, and frankly, that was giving me a bad feeling. However, I shrugged the question and replied in the following manner. You know. I see. Well, I was talking to Lisa, so as an adult, my inner thoughts should be plain as day to her. She loosened her expression and looked at the nearby Hagana. If you leave, Hagana will probably feel sad and lonely. That's a great joke. No, really, Yosharu, you don't realize this, but she has become slightly attached to you. Basically, all of you have become attached to each other. You guys kind of became like a family. Oh? I was being quite serious. I was at a loss for how to answer the serious-faced Lisa, and ended up hiding behind my coffee. I sipped, buying myself some time. The moon's a small place. Lisa opened her eyes, slightly surprised. And then she sipped lightly on her coffee and replied, I guess you're right. She continued after pausing for a sight. However, didn't they build a new city? The moon will expand. Oh yeah, I heard about that too. I think they also built a large-scale residential district over by my house. I wonder if they could make a second orbital elevator. What? Now that's something possible. I do wonder, but it does look like the moon is going to get more lively. Hagana got a little restless on Lisa's lap with her talking. I guess we were a bit too noisy. Lisa looked at Hagana, then put her index finger to her lips. Hagana was a bit restless for a while, but she eventually returned to breathing softly. Lisa stroked Hagana's head and smiled gently. I wonder what we should do for lunch. Lisa's words were quite pastoral, very fitting for Sunday. The peaceful Sunday passed by sleepily and slowly, just like the drops of water hanging onto the wash drying out in the sun. Perhaps turning points in people's lives are more likely to come crashing in on those days. Oh, is something gonna happen? Around sunset, I headed back to my room, turned on the computer to find that I had received an email. I had thought it was the usual stuff from the security firms, but it was from Ratzinger Economics Research Center. Are you getting scouted already? It hit me as if someone punched me directly in the heart. I opened the email to find a short message. We have received a message from one of the sponsors of the current investment contest addressed to you, Mr. Yoshiharu Kawara. It was unthinkable that a sponsor of this contest would be anyone other than someone involved in the financial world. Oh no, Yoshiharu is the one talking. Sorry. It was unthinkable that a sponsor of this contest would be anyone other than someone involved in the financial world. Even though I was the only person here, I checked my surroundings. And then I gulped and sheepishly used my trembling hand to move the cursor to the download attachment button. Scouted. I frankly tried to downplay my expectations, telling myself that it was probably some recommendation for an investment product. Schrödinger Street, a financial district where lions, tigers, and bears gathered. It was the world of markets, both gorgeous and somehow wicked. Enormous assets only allow for those who ran through those streets. The key to opening the doors to all my desires could be found there. The title of the downloaded letter was succinct. From Barton Clodwisen, head of the investment fund, the Britannica. Throwing away all my doubts, I opened the letter. What I felt at the moment was something I never forget. I've seen some of your skills from the investment data. I'd really like to meet you. And only that line was written briskly. It was haughty and upfront. It was just how I imagined someone living in the financial districts would write. I pumped my fist in the front of the computer. I felt like I was almost about to scream out in joy. But I'm wondering, part of your success is because Hagen's program. So wouldn't you be forming a duo with her here? I ended up conversing back and forth 3 times over email with Barton Cloudwisen, manager of the investment fund, the Britannica. Okay, so you guys talked it out. I was totally shocked at receiving a reply within 5 seconds of replying to the attached email address. There were people in Schrödinger Street with incomes so high that they make more than 100 moves in the time it took me to pick up 100 moves bills off the street. This speedy response, as if confirming my expectations, nearly made me piss my pants. This was a feeling I had forgotten. It was something very unlike the fresh scent of detergent. It was something born out of pretty much foregoing the bath for 3 months. Okay, now calm down. We're not talking about a smelly scent like that. I won't be needing dinner tonight. I said this during breakfast. Lisa looked at me, surprised, and even Hagana looked at me. Oh, did you have plans? Going to meet with someone. At my words, Lisa and Hagana looked at each other. A friend? Nope. I replied bluntly. I didn't want to tell Lisa and Hagana about Barton. It was my dream. It was the first step to a dream waiting for me. I see. Well, just don't do anything too dangerous, okay? Even though Lisa was talking like her usual self, this time it felt irritating. There was no doubt Lisa was a grown-up woman, but she was not a grown-up man. What do you mean by that? She definitely wasn't the type to basically state her business over email to someone she pretty much never met before. She definitely wasn't the type to reply within 5 seconds. Okay, now you're comparing her with Barton. Newton City, with its buildings of wealth built up using arrogant steel frames, was not a place for women and children. Okay, now hold up. What do you mean by that? Women can be investors and traders and wealthy. I remember the arrogance, and it's been a while since I thought of it. When will you be back? No idea. If it's too late, you get scolded by the police. I know already. Lisa sighed, as if wondering whether I really got it. However, she didn't say anymore. To start with, I was merely bombing a place here, and she was simply the owner of the place. Come on, your relationship is a little more than that. She had no right to limit where I could go or how I could or who I could meet. You're also underage, if you remember your charm. Hagana? Hagana, who had been sitting at the opposite corner of the table, shook a bit when I called her and looked at me. Is today's trading data ready? I'll send. Hagana replied with some uncertainty in her voice. And then Hagana looked up at Lisa, and Lisa looked back down at her. I needed to hold myself and get rid of this soaking the day away in the bathtub feeling. I had an appointment to meet with Barton in a hotel in Newton City at 6 p.m. tonight. I couldn't afford to be lumped with all the sloths around here. I put all my concentration into trading. I'll be back later. And that was the last time we saw Yosharu. I got up from the chair as soon as trading stopped, foregoing even my usual stretching. Hagana, who had been sitting next to me, was unable to reply as she watched me depart. I threw all my belongings into my bag, ran down the hallway, jumped over the pews, and hit the exit in one go. And then, when I opened the large doors, I heard a cry from the other side. Yeah. Huh? Across from the doorway was Chris, of course, standing there and scared to death, as always. Oh, it's you, Chris. What's the... The rest of my senses got swallowed up by the large old man standing behind Chris. It's Lisa here. He had a big gut, a great beard, and overalls on. The perfect example of an upstanding laborer fashion. Okay, wow, that was a little loud. But I wonder if this guy is the one that is wanting to collect the 50,000 debt from Lisa. The hand he laid on Chris' delicate shoulder looked like rubber from all the oil and manual labor. Or maybe not. Lisa? She ain't here, but should come home soon, I think. I see. But maybe you can wait inside? Oh, and Hagen is inside as well. I said those words to Chris, then dashed off. Chris was about to say something to me, but I waved my hand without turning back, dashing to the amber-colored street. Oh boy. I wonder what we're gonna find once we get back from this meeting. Like, what's gonna be happening while we're gone. Because something's definitely happening. Oddly, I thought to myself, Chris wasn't carrying any baggage this time. That man behind her was probably her dad, huh? You're assuming, which is a possibility I also thought of, but not the only possibility. I was a bit curious about what they wanted, but In the end, I didn't really care. I had to make it to the Royal Central Hotel in Newton City by 6. Taking the Lunar Development Railroad to Newton City wouldn't take more than 30 minutes. The hotel was super high-end, even on the moon, and thus could be reached within a few minutes of walking from the station. Even if I took it easy, I'd totally be able to make it, but I could not afford to be late. Furthermore, I was so pumped up, it was impossible for me to take a stroll. I flew, dashed through, and jumped, weaving my way through rush hour traffic, and I managed to launch myself through the closing doors of one of the trains. Oh, the usual train thing. I kind of forgot about this. The train to Newton City was crowded, but the trains I'd see from time to time going in the opposite direction were even more packed like sardines. Due to a lack of land on the moon's surface, a real house would be terrifically expensive. People who want to save their money and not pay the ridiculous high rent in the white belt opt to live in the outer sections. Recently, some quite nice residential districts had been built in the outer sections, and redevelopment was proceeding. What remained was pretty much the area where Lisa's church was. The dome covering this lunar city started changing gradually from orange to deep blue in color, and the twinkling stars started showing through. Even before 6, wow. At these times, due to the kind of half-hearted lighting, you could see the traces of pipes and supports used to bring rain to the moon. From one side, you could see the orderly arrangement of buildings along the street of the White Belt, and the orderly streetlights extended all the way across to the other side. The sparkling clean lightings from the house made it easy to imagine a beautiful dinner on top of that beautiful dining table inside of a beautiful house. Now, isn't that beautiful? After some time, the train started making a gradual turn, and I could start to see Newton City in the distance. There it is, Newton City at night. Newton City at night was a sight to see, even more so than it was during the day. On Earth, there was this phrase, $1 million view, used to refer to places that had spectacular view at night. Really, was it specific at night? Here, this view was labeled as 100 million view. Shining into space like some star base, these tall buildings could only be built here, away from Earth's gravity. The space between buildings was dark like a vacuum, and the light flowing out of the windows illuminated the skyscrapers gradually. Okay, we got some music. I finally arrived at Newton City Central Station. It was more packed than the usual due to rush hour. Most of the pedestrians were in suits. There were no signs of men in overalls and with oily hands. There weren't that many people in rough clothing. You'd either have people dressed up in easily recognizable top-class suits, or you'd have people with messy attire and hair above the latest mobile terminals. In either case, you could tell they worked in some of the top enterprises that could comprise Newton City. The remaining people were tourists who'd set out to visit Newton City at night. Following the route I had planned before heading out, I navigated the complex and meandering routes in the station. The biggest pathway spanning east to west inside the central station was adorned with gigantic ads, billboards for insurance, software, popular singers, cosmetics, investment banks, and Emerald Industries continue for as far as the eye could see. In front of those ads, you'd see smart and well-paid people in suits meeting up, talking on the phone or fidgeting with their terminals. Right above the station was one of the numerous shopping malls in Newton City. The ads gave way to shop windows, and eventually you could see an entrance with automatic doors. Passing that, you come across shop windows, ads, etc. that continued onwards. Mannequins that couldn't really be mimicking realistic humans' form wore gaudy clothing and looked down at the commuters, seemingly with disdain. People traversing the automatic doors held many large bags. In each bag should the merchandise worth at least several thousands, if not several tens of thousands of pools. Even the most expensive clothing from the store Hagen had haggled down with, all her effort could not amount to even the sales tax on something that people here would buy to wear every day. Glancing at the scenery from the corner of my eyes, I finally made it out of the building housing the station. In front of me was an open space, and a giant, dizzying hologram of a blonde girl, clad in a flashy outfit, dancing and singing, floated in midair. Oh, so they also have idols here, huh? I jogged along the gently curved path towards the buildings on the other side. Automobiles weren't allowed up to the entrance of the station, but just a bit further down were so many multi-layered traffic circles that it would have been a pain to count. They were filled with headlights of taxis, buses, and limousines. The gorgeousness of Newton City at night was in full swing, and it was said they couldn't even see this from Earth with the naked eye. On the other side of the station were government offices and Schrödinger Street, whereas the shopping and entertainment district were on the side. There were no trees like the ones randomly growing everywhere in the outer districts. There were only totally tame trees laying in the streets, and they themselves were lined with multicolored LEDs. It was quite laughable. LEDs, I guess? The better way to pronounce that. Once you entered the area with shops for ridiculous high-class brands, the ground turned into a stone pavement. The cars were also luxury vehicles imported from Earth. Cost to use the auto elevator was determined by weight, and products such as cars carried a ridiculous high tariff. The moon didn't really have that expensive a network of roads, and even if it did, there weren't many places you'd be able to drop off and pick up passengers. Having a luxury car essentially amounted to raising a pet bug that ate away at your wealth. Sorry, I was thinking of a pet, and normally they eat away at your health. Though I guess wealth too. Around the shiny, polished red and yellow sports car were thin women and men standing and talking. At times, they notice me, chuckle to themselves, and go back to their conversations. Oh, are they trash-talking you? I actually was in a position where I deserved being laughed at, so I didn't really care. However, 10 years later, or perhaps 20, I'd be someone who could strut through the streets with its head held high. I guess you might say telling myself this was a product of my annoyance at the situation. However, a more practical reason for this was that I needed a certain frame of mind to go forth from here. The front entrance of the Royal Central Hotel. And there it is, the Royal Central Hotel entrance. We got some jazzy music. The Royal Central Hotel was owned by the king of hotels on the moon, Ab al-Zaid. I had heard that it was a luxury hotel where rooms started at 1,000 moons and royal suites on the top floor were 20,000 moons a night. There was a giant fountain in front of the entrance. Luxury cars constantly passed the path to the front foyer. Since this was also a great place for viewing the night scenery, it wasn't a problem if random people wandered in. Even though I knew this, I was somehow nervous. It was a bit late, but I would have preferred to have worn the hoodie I bought that time at the store. Although I should have just bought something better in the first place. In the gigantic front foyer that seemed to intimidate anyone who came, doormen were lined up and tended to obviously rich guests coming by. What finally gave me some relief was that I managed to mix in with a bunch of tourists who had come up on the path to the foyer. The experienced doorman smiled as he opened the door to welcome the non-hotel guests in. Perhaps I was a bit nervous, but I felt that the doorman crunched his eyebrows at me when I passed by. I told myself it was just my imagination. Oh, look at the lobby. Look at the tables here. Are they going to be sitting at one of the tables, or are they going to be elsewhere? Entering the hotel placed me in a huge lobby, making me feel as if I had just been injected into deep space. I thought it was quite fascinating how they managed to get such a huge space on the moon. Even though rooms started at 1,000 moons a night, there were many guests lined up at the front counter. I looked at my watch, confirming that it was around 10 minutes before 6 appointment. I didn't have the guts to simply walk around and browse, so I was starting to regret coming a bit too early. Just standing in the middle of the carpeted lobby, I suddenly heard a voice call out to me. Wait, carpeted? Oh, I guess this part is carpeted. Oh. And a voice called out to him. Oh, the porter. Is there something I can help you with today, sir? I reflexively end up jumping. I turn around to see a beautiful porter with a round face and her hair tied. Oh, it's a woman. So let's try that. Is there something I can help you with today, sir? I kind of screwed that up, but sure. Are you here for lodging? She asked me with a smile. No. I see. This hotel comes with many facilities for you to enjoy yourself. Would you like me to show you some of them? She spoke quite politely to someone like me, who obviously looked like to be lacking money. However, I finally managed to remember the reason why I came here. I wasn't some kid from Earth or the outer sections coming here to look around. I have to meet someone in the cafe on the first floor. I managed to squeeze my words out while sounding like I was hit with a bout of the hiccups. The porter lady nodded as if she received an important message, then smiled. Understood. If you'll please follow me. And then she escorted me politely to the cafe as if I were some important government official. Okay, we're gonna see the cafe. Oh. I thought we were gonna see the cafe. Now I feel disappointed. This is the cafe. Please take your time. And then she clasped her hands together, took a deep bow, turned on her heels, and walked away. Her mannerisms were exquisite. Furthermore, as soon as I was shown to the entrance of the cafe, a waiter who had been waiting by the entrance walked quickly up to me. Welcome. Are you here to meet someone? Huh? Yeah, actually. How did he know? I puzzled over this while I saw in my peripheral a party being shown to the cafe by a different porter. The porter, after showing the party the cafe, made a motion with her hand behind her back to the waiter. It was probably some sort of signal. Could you please let me know the name of the person you are meeting? Yeah. I came back to my senses and looked at the tall, handsome waiter. They were all tall and slim, but he was gushing all smiles. He really enjoyed their work. Or perhaps it was because he had confidence in his work. And thus, it looked quite cool. But Barton Clodwise. I struggled to somehow say his name. After I did that, the waiter looked shocked for a moment before straightening his stance and returning back to being all smiles. Like, hold up. This kid is meeting the Barton Clodweisel? Okay, back to work. My apologies for my behavior. Please allow me to show you the way. Hmm? Yeah, see, once he knew who you're meeting, he just stepped up his respect. I had wondered about his surprise at first, but I was more surprised at the fact that I only needed to mention the name. I heard that they had to memorize the name of all the patrons who made the reservations. The waiter led the way, past the properly dressed fellows, slowly sipping tea, and further into the cafe. Situated in the corner of the open space lobby, the cafe had no ceiling and had a feeling of freedom. However, the cafe sloped up. The further I proceeded, there were seats hidden from view by plants and shrubs, which cleanly segregated various areas. We walked upon the plush carpet that muffled our footsteps, past the fish tank full of bright red arowanas, and then proceeded along a wall composed of potted plants with pretty yellow flowers. It was so far that the music did not even reach us. Finally, the waiter stopped and smiled. "We have arrived." And then he turned to his side and said, "The guest you have been expecting has arrived." But we're gonna cliffhanger, because I don't even know how Barton looks like. But we're gonna find out next time. So let's recap here. So we had them making actual profit in the real market. So Yoshiharu actually was helping out Hagen to see the product of her work, giving her some of the profit, just as he promised her 20% of any profit they made. And that really was a sight to see for her. But she also decided to use that to help out Lisa's debt, which she never really paid, but considering the situation they were at, it was nothing really. Then we had the slow day on Sunday with Lisa and Hagen have the little picnic outside. And finally, we had the scouting. Yoshiharu was finally scouted. Like I said before, I do believe it was more of a partnership now. They realized him was because of him using the program and stuff, I imagine, which helped the profit. So it's more of a partnership between him and Agana, and not just him. But yeah, now he's actually gonna meet up with a person. I wonder how Barto is gonna react when he sees Yoshiharu. Both of how he's been living on the outer section and his clothing aren't really that great. And the fact that he's a kid. I wonder if he even knows that part. So I'm expecting some surprise when he sees Yoshiharu for the first time. But we're also going to have to see how he acts when speaking to Yoshiharu in their meeting. But that is for next time. So with that being said, see you next time. Bye!
Set the scene in a local bed's big dream.